Ah, hit the button. And another Stefan Molyneux video. Yeah. Yeah, this one is responding to some guy's article, just pointing out that there's really no way to, even if you're a free marketeer, there's no way to avoid the construction of some force that obliges the existence of almost a common law kind of thing, basic rules that you have to play by, and no rules just won't work. It's not possible. And so he just snarkily responds, and with inane arguments, and so I've time coded a few of those, and I'll just jump through them, but it's more of the same stuff. They did do a little economics video about some sort of failure of the economy or something, but fundamentally I don't disagree that you can't just borrow money and spend it, and there's lots of things going on here in our economy that I would agree that are not practices that are useful or functional, like the waste of money on the military. But he doesn't identify the real villain, which isn't banksters. Okay, it's the rich. It's the acquisition of wealth and control, and that he would not fix. And that I would fix. And I would fix it through government. So anyway, let's play. So I'll leave a link to, I did an economics video on the economics channel. It's pretty good. That is a much more accurate explanation how the game is played and such, so forth and whatnot. See if this works.
Hi everybody, Stefan Molyneux. It's also known as pulling psychic orbs out of your ass and pretending you've got a third eye. Nobody knows how freedom is going to work in the 50 to 100 to 200 years it's going to take to build a stateless, free, voluntary, peaceful society. Nope.
Yeah, whatever. That ain't going to happen. You can't build it. You either do it, like through revolution, or you got no chance at all. You're not going to be able to incrementally deconstruct rational policy. Just not going to be able to do that.
Nobody knows. Nobody knows. You tell me what the price of Apple is going to be in a week, either the fruit or the company, and I will listen to you about your prediction.
Yeah, apples are pretty regular in their price, so I'm probably going to be pretty close on regular apples. But whatever. If that's what does it for you, if that's all somebody has to do to gain credibility is make a guess and be right, I'd say that's a little silly.
But nobody even knows that, so we have a veil of ignorance about the future. When you have a veil of ignorance...
Right, okay, so we don't have a veil of ignorance, right? We do know exactly, we can model all kinds of things, so yes, you can model what happens under anarcho-capitalism, and it models into, dynasties and, Attila the Hun.
You have no landmarks. When you have no landmarks, you have to sail or navigate by principles. When you
yeah, whatever. So again, yeah, principles like what? Like, humans are intrinsically fair-minded. Humans have identically the same sensibilities and will innately know when they're stepping on somebody else's toes. No, none of that's true. So anyway, this wasn't a great clip, but this is not one of his better videos, so it's hard to do as much with it. So we would jump to the next time.
And what did you get? 80 years, you got a massive civil war with over 600,000 people murdered, a fascistic Lincoln imposing his will, and that...
Okay, so he called Lincoln a fascist. I mean, can you understand just exactly how ludicrous this is? So the guy who says, declares that somebody's a human being, and that you can't apply force to the human being and abuse the human beings with force, the guy stopping people from forcibly enslaving people is the fascist. The fascists who have decided to, for their own service, for their own utility, to dehumanize humans, those aren't fascists. Those bigots aren't fascists. Lincoln's the fascist. you know, I mean, you got to say that if somebody's going to use rhetoric like this, they got to sort of take responsibility for the obvious implication of it, which is you're just another white guy, you know, with a small penis. Yeah, you got a small penis, right?
And you got the invasion of the Philippines, and then you got the subjugation of Hawaii, and then you got the creation of the Federal Reserve and the institution of government schools, and then you get the...
Right, so he just goes down these stupid litanies like they've all done nothing good ever. Like none of these things were good things, which is silly.
After the creation of the Fed, you get the great boom of the 1920s. After Wilson lied to get everyone into the First World War, then you've got a massive 14-year...
Yeah, so and again, he doesn't point out why the 1920s ended up being the disaster of the 1930s, which is the rich got preposterously richer during the 1920s.
Depression that is ended by another lie to get into the Second World War, which is the attack on Pearl Harbor, and then right after...
Alright, the attack on Pearl Harbor's a lie. Well, I mean, it was a stupid dispute, that's for sure. We should have never gotten into an argument with the Japanese just because they ate a few Chinamen. I mean, it does seem a little extreme. This is this bizarre replay of history. And to impugn all motives as being all these events were negative events. I mean, it's just idiotic. You know, I mean, it didn't mention Hitler for some reason. Why didn't you mention Hitler? Hitler was the real cause of the war, wasn't he? I mean, the Japanese wouldn't have gone to war if we weren't already occupied by the Germans. Well, I mean, we weren't already. The world wasn't already threatened by the Germans.
That you've got the Korean War, and then you have the 60s with Lyndon Johnson's War on Poverty, and then you...
Oh, horror, yes, and minimum wages, and the fact that in the 60s and 70s, and the middle class never had it better. So the era where the middle class never had it better. Oh, what a horror. Oh, what horrible policies that created that middle class. You know, made the rich less rich. So the only period in history where the rich got less rich, he finds that horrible. Lyndon Johnson, evil, evil.
You got the stagflation of the 70s with Nixon at the helm.
Right, where, again, wages were never... The reason why you had stagflation, the reason why you had inflation, is because wages were going up.
Decoupling the American dollar from gold in 71, and then you got the housing boom of the 80s, a couple more wars.
The housing boom of the 80s doesn't really make much sense. Sorry. Yeah, it doesn't really make much sense. I mean, the housing boom has been going on for 60 years. But whatever. The bubble of the 90s might be more accurate. The bubble of the 2000s, really.
And only one government to enforce it. See, statements is not philosophy. You should know this. Ayn Rand called it philosophizing in midstream, and that's not philosophy at all. This is a bumper sticker masquerading as some sort of...
And that's entirely the substance of your rhetoric, is just these silly little cliches, these silly, steal the money of the fetuses of the future. I mean, this isn't philosophy. You're just cliches. Okay, meaningless, mushy, fear-mongering. You know, you're just this little kind of gay and polite Alex Jones. You know, fuck the truth, okay? Just find a scapegoat and call it government. Because government is going to make me, damn it, be fair, and I don't want to be fair. I'm better than you. My kids are better than you. My ranch is cooler than yours. Fuck you.
Philosophical insight. So, also if there's only one supreme law of the land, then, and only one just form of laws, then really we're talking about a worldwide government, right? Because only one
Yeah, why not? And yeah, there's a lot of that happening, actually, you know. We have disputes over stuff like whaling or some other thing, and we basically negotiate with other countries and say, well, if you're going to be assholes about this, we're going to have to be assholes back at you, fuckhead. And so then you make a deal to say, okay, you can be a little bit of an asshole, but you just can't be this big an asshole. And so we're already migrating to some sort of, you know, we do have to live here together, and you can't do something really stupid like put up $458 nuclear plants, and I can't feel comfortable if you do that, you see. So, I mean, you have to do certain things responsibly by some sort of general code, or everybody's going to get pissed off.
Government can adhere to a perfect standard. Therefore, all governments or governments which don't adhere to it must be immoral and unjust, right? So we're talking about one world.
Yeah, that's right. We're talking about the idea that rights are something we all should be able to figure out, and we have a little debate about it, and we say, oh yeah, this is basic stuff, right? You have a right not to be enslaved or raped or done this or done that, and we can make all kinds of these old rules that everybody can agree on because they're just so fucking obvious. Don't shit in my water. Yeah, okay, this is really easy shit, and we can do this. We can pull this one off. We can get the right stuff right. You don't blame kids for mama being a whore. That's just logical.
Government here. Could conflict among competing governments be taken care of by treaties? Treaties enforced by whom? By the customers. You person. By customers. I mean,
yeah, by customers, right. By my mob and your mob. So we make a treaty, and if somebody breaks the treaty, yeah, we go to war. Isn't that all there is to your conversation here? There's nothing else. There's just my mob goes and beats the shit out of you, or, you know, rapes your mama. You know, this is, yeah, so you're just back to the same mechanism. You're just saying the authority of the tribe, their logic, their rules, their sense of honor somehow should dictate policy, and that if you made this a broader policy decision through a democratic process rather than just some kind of like, that's what the king says, you know, the king says so. It's to the king's advantage. Yeah, no. Like I said, I don't want Google deciding. I'd rather a democracy than Google.
There can only be one cell phone company. Because they're never going to exchange data. Who would enforce them? Who would make them do that? The customers make them do that. There can only be one ISP, you see, because ISPs will never, ever...
I don't know. I've never had a cell phone, but as I understand, there's huge compatibility issues. You can't get this phone to work with that service, and you can't do this thing unless you buy that plan. So I see lots of limitations based on capitalist proprietarization of the mechanism.
Exchange data. There can only be one email provider because email provider...
So there you go. You're talking about the internet and email, things invented basically by government subsidies. So things that wouldn't exist without government, right? Theoretically, there's, you know, his capitalist world isn't going to invest the capital to ever do any of this stuff that takes a long time to gain real value. And it took a long time for the internet to gain real value to capitalists anyway. I mean, it had no value to it had no capitalistic value in its invention, in its infancy. There was no way to make money on it at all. And so it wouldn't have fucking existed in his fucking world. It's just the typical bullshit. You know, they do nothing to create anything, to provide anything, and then they claim, oh yeah, we did it. And they had nothing to do with it. I wonder what his internet business was. I really do. I mean, I just wonder whether it was anything that had intellectual property, because he doesn't believe in intellect. I mean, I don't like 50-year, 100-year copyright. I mean, I think that's bullshit. I mean, you should be able to get 10 years. If you can't make your money, it's open source. It should be that way with software and everything. There should be no permanent ownership. But no intellectual property rights is just insane.
The state, human beings as mammals will always be drawn to getting free shit and calling it virtue. And the best...
There. So this is where he's critiquing human beings. So human beings will always be drawn to free shit, cut the corner, do whatever you have to do to get your piece. So he's basically admitting that's what human beings will always be. That's what he said, always. So it doesn't matter how well you raise them, they're still going to be selfish animals, and they're going to act like selfish animals when push comes to shove.
The way to do that is to create a government where you can proclaim virtue and have people salute you as you rifle through the pockets of their fetuses. So...
yeah, more of that kind of fetus talk, you know, that Ayn Rand would find so fucking interesting. Yeah.
The idea that this government is not going to be inhabited by power-seeking mammals is a delusion. You're creating some...
well, there you go. So, again, power-hungry seeking mammals, and there you go. So he just wants to... he wants to make us back into, like, some sort of, you know, gorillas, and we'll just go out and, you know, massacre each other every now and then. And most of the time, everything will look very harmonious, except for the 1% of the time where we're, you know, macheting the fuck out of each other. And they'll call that civilization.
Some artificial construct in an alternate dimension and saying, well, see, that's how it's going to work here. But that's not how things work here. The example of America might be somewhat instructive in this area.
Well, whatever. We don't need to do that again, do we? Yeah, no, I don't think so. American history, again, in the you know, based on fucktard, yeah, as the principle.
If I offer to protect my neighbors, and I do not violate the non-aggression principle, then it is not force. I mean...
I protect them by shooting all the darkies that come into town. But it's not force. We have a sign that says no darkies. So, I mean, I'm allowed to shoot them.
If the private citizens have the right to use force in self-defense, then they have the right to gather together and patrol the streets and use force in self-defense. That which is...
right, self-defense of what? Their arbitrary definitions of what they're going to tolerate in other people. So we all get to have our own sensibilities and sensitivities, and we get to just shoot the fuck out of anybody who violates them because we say so. We, the mob or collective, or the members of DRO F-14. And that's how you play the game rationally and sensibly. That's how you become a civilization. No, I don't think so.
It's permitted to one is permitted to all. That which is denied to one is denied to all, unless you're going to create these crazy schizoid Call of Saluthu opposing moral categories on a whim, which I think he seems to be doing.
Opposing moral categories on a whim. No, you're going to just recognize the fact that people don't like each other. That it doesn't take much for person A to offend person B. And that if you don't have any mechanism to resolve those problems, you're going to have a problem.
Note that a proper government, does not prohibit a man from using force to defend himself in an emergency. Sorry, he did get to it. When recourse to the government is not available. But it does properly require him to prove objectively at a trial that he was acting in emergency self-defense.
Which just requires me throwing a hand grenade next to his dead body. Yeah, the grenade! Can't you see it? Yeah. His fingerprints are on it. Is that proof? Shit. I mean, really, this is really quite funny, right? Yes, it's really quite funny.
Similarly, the government does not ban private guards, but it does properly bring private guards under its supervision by licensing them. Ooh! Really? Government licensing? That's where objectivism is these days?
Well, yeah, I mean, it does have some sort of accountability tied to it, some sort of training tied to it, so yeah, government licensing makes some sense. Yeah, you actually prove that you're a doctor. Yeah, that sort of makes sense. I mean, it's sort of, I think it's kind of helpful to know that, okay, the guy can't say he's a doctor without going to jail, all right, if he's not a doctor, if he didn't go to medical school. I mean, he has to do that shit. That's sort of, I think, important that the guy who's going to be cutting me open and taking my appendix out actually went to medical school. I think I would appreciate some assurance that that's what's taking place. But not him. He doesn't mind. You know, he doesn't care. Any guy with any old voodoo, you know. I mean, that's the irony, right? I mean, we wouldn't have any medical system in his world, and he, you know, it saved his life. And yet it wouldn't have existed. If he would have won this argument 100 years ago, the medicine that saved his life wouldn't have existed.
And does not grant them any special rights or immunities. They remain subject to the government's authority and its laws. They cannot make their own laws. Absolutely. Fair enough.
Dr. Ehrlich wouldn't have been able to spend 10 years finding a cure for syphilis. 10 years. Treatment. If there wasn't some way, when he did create it, 606, when he created the 606th experiment that finally worked, alright, if he couldn't make any money off of it to pay the bills. But this guy would say, no, it's not yours. I can manufacture it cheaper. So, you know, wait, yeah, huh? Inconsistency. You see the inconsistency here?
This would be, so this is exactly true for the police, this is exactly true for individuals, this is exactly true for security guards. Yeah, everybody is, the police use force.
Everybody is able to throw a grenade next to their ex-wife. She was coming at me with a grenade. She was. Trust me. You have to trust me, right? Because there's no judge, jury, evidence, or any of that shit, so what the fuck? I win, right? My DRO says I acted totally appropriately. I mean, she had a grenade. She was coming right for me.
Practices in the present, boy, that's a lot of peace. But, palindrome, okay, one more. So I think that we're not going to have to really worry about violence that much in a future society. Like, you don't really worry about polio now, right? Or smallpox or leprosy in most of the...
Right. And so I only kept this clip just because it's ironic, right? Because we don't worry about polio because we had a polio vaccine and we made people take it. And we'd still have polio all over the frickin' place if we didn't do that. So we wouldn't have no cure for polio in his world. And certainly nobody could make money inventing the vaccine, so the vaccine would never even been produced, because no company could make any money producing it, doing the research to create it. No antibiotics, no polio vaccine. In his world, those things will not exist.
So as well, you don't worry about these things, right? So in the future, we're not really going to have to worry about the plague of violence because we'll be parenting peacefully, and therefore we won't have to worry about it. And this is all nonsense. By the time we get to a free society, the initiation of the use of force is going to be so rare that it's like you're saying, well, we can't go outside until we build a...
All right. So, I mean, do any of you believe that this is true? That he has a mechanism installed innately? We have this innate mechanism that tends us to resolve disputes amicably, not to resolve them in the quickest, most expedient, and most brutal manner. That it's not a clear evidence in all of human history that human beings do not choose this diplomatic means, and they only choose the diplomatic means when it's imposed upon them, when there's a force that says we're going to be civilized, when Rome shows up and says, no, you're going to do it this way. It doesn't, otherwise they're called barbarians for a reason. Yeah. Fuck.
Massive metal dome over the sky because of all of the lightning. Well, lightning is pretty rare, and you can stay in when it's necessary, and that's going to be like violence in the future. Not going to be such a big deal. So
yeah, again, there's absolutely no evidence of that. The escalation of the violence is clear. The escalation of the hardware capable of doing really horrid violence is clear. The fact that we don't resolve disputes with some other mechanism is clear, unless there is some democratic force where we can all vote for it. Because if we let the minority decide, the minority will take us to war. Because they can make some money off of it. Shit. This is just so stupid. Sorry, link below. And this is really enough. There's no point in dragging this out. This is just horrible, 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 horrible. There's nothing else to say. So, till next time. It's